The Square of Judgment. The square was alive with sound. 1,000 voices rose in unison, their alien throats producing guttural tones that rattled the very air. Hollow banners shimmered above the obsidian walls, casting fractured light over the gathering. The black stone beneath their feet pulsed faintly, an ancient bioengineered foundation that echoed the collective heartbeat of the crowd. In the center, shackled and trembling, stood Lyra. Her skin, pale and smooth like polished glass, quivered with a faint pulse of colors, rippling blues and violets that marked her as impure. The Tribunal had decreed such light a crime against their bloodline. To display it was shame, to live with it was treason. The first stone was lifted. A low hiss went through the assembly as a robed elder raised his long, clawed hand toward the sky. The stone hovered above his palm, caught in a magnetic sling, its weight humming. His eyes glowed with cold authority as he prepared to cast judgment. That was when a ripple cut through the sea of bodies. Daniel Cross, a human, traveler, mercenary, or perhaps just a fool, pushed forward. His jacket was torn from the press of the crowd, his boots scraping the volcanic pavement. The aliens recoiled as he shouldered past them, their luminous eyes narrowing with disgust at the scent of him. Sweat, iron, leather. "Stop," he said. His voice carried strangely, not because it was loud, but because it was different. Unfamiliar vowels, a sharpness alien tongues lacked. The elder sneered, his crest feathers flaring. "This is no concern of your kind. Off-worlder. Step aside." Daniel's gaze fell on Lyra. Her eyes were wide, shimmering pools of violet panic. She shook her head faintly, as though begging him not to interfere. The chain at her wrist clinked in protest, her bioluminescence flickering in shame. Something inside him clenched. He had seen executions before, on colonies, on backwater moons where law was as brittle as bone, but there was something about her trembling defiance that felt wrong. Too wrong to ignore. The elder's hand jerked forward. The stone flew. Daniel moved. He didn't think, didn't plan. His body simply obeyed. He threw himself between Lyra and the path of the stone, arms outstretched. The impact cracked against his ribs with a sickening crunch, pain erupting like fire down his side. He staggered, breathless, but stayed on his feet. Blood trickled down, warm against the chill air of the square. A stunned silence rippled outward. The aliens stared. Their law said nothing of this, nothing of a creature so foolish, so reckless, that it would bleed for another not its own. Lyra's mouth parted, but no sound came. Her light shifted uncontrollably, streaming in terrified bursts of pink and gold. Daniel swayed, but planted his boots firm, glaring at the elder through the haze of pain. "You'll have to go through me," he rasped. For the first time in generations, the square did not echo with approval. It echoed with uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, the old law trembled. Chapter 2, The Outcast and the Stranger. The ceiling above Daniel glowed with a dull, sterile blue. At first, he thought he was staring into the sky of some forgotten colony, but then the ache in his ribs reminded him of where he was, or rather, that he was still alive. The air smelled faintly metallic, like recycled oxygen filtered too many times through alien lungs. A low hum vibrated through the walls. Medical machinery, though unlike any he'd known on Earth or its scattered colonies. He shifted, and a sharp sting lanced through his side. A soft gasp came from nearby. "Don't move," a voice whispered. Daniel turned his head, wincing. Sitting beside the cot was Lyra. The glow of her skin was muted, barely pulsing beneath the surface, as though she fought to keep it hidden. Her long fingers tightened around a cloth dipped in some iridescent fluid. She dabbed carefully at the blood crusted along his chest. "You should have left me," she said, her voice low, fractured. "They would have ended me quickly. Now you are." She faltered, the words trembling as much as her hands. Daniel managed a crooked smile, though his face was pale with blood loss. Not really my style. Humans are stubborn like that. Her violet eyes flicked toward him, curious, almost disbelieving. Stubborn or foolish? Both, he admitted with a weak chuckle. The sound startled her, as if laughter was something foreign here. She studied him in silence for a moment, then set the cloth aside. You don't understand. My people, Karidi, they purge what is wrong. And I am wrong. My light doesn't conform. It sings in colors they fear. She raised her hand slightly, and despite herself, the glow seeped out, soft streaks of blue, pink, and gold rippling like waves under her skin. Daniel's breath caught, not from pain this time, but wonder. That's not wrong, he said quietly. That's beautiful. Her expression faltered. No one had ever said those words to her. Not once. Outside the infirmary's transparent walls, neon skylines of the city pulsed in the night. Hovercraft streamed along elevated channels, their lights streaking through smog like comets. The muffled roar of 1,000 alien voices echoed from the levels below, still buzzing with the story of the human who had bled for a traitor. Lyra's shoulders hunched. They will not forgive you. Already the Tribunal, whispers of defiance. They will come for you. For us. Daniel slowly pushed himself upright, grimacing at the stab of pain. Let them whisper, he said, his gaze locked on hers, steady and unflinching. You've been surviving in their shadows. I've seen it before, people crushed by law, by fear. But survival isn't living, Lyra. Sometimes you've got to bleed a little just to show them you won't bow. Her throat tightened. She turned away, blinking hard, as if refusing to let tears betray her. In that sterile chamber, with the city's neon glow reflecting across the glass, something shifted. For Lyra, who had known only shame, his words planted something fragile, almost dangerous. The idea that difference was not a curse, but strength. And for Daniel, battered but unbroken, the resolve hardened. Whatever storm he had just stepped into on this alien world, he wasn't walking away, not while she still shivered in chains of her people's making. Chapter 3. Sparks Against the Empire. The Karath High Tribunal sat in their crystalline spires above the city, their decrees carried by drones through every street and market. By the second night after the square, Daniel's defiance had become more than rumor. It had become contagion. In the alleys and neon-lit corners, whispers spread of the alien with forbidden light, and the human who bled to shield her. That was enough to draw the Tribunal's enforcers. Daniel and Lyra moved quickly, slipping to the lower districts where the sky was a permanent haze of purple smog, and the hum of hovercraft never ceased. The undercity smelled of spice smoke, burning fuel, and too many bodies pressed too close. Towering structures loomed overhead, patched together with alien alloys and ancient stone. Here, the polished arrogance of the spires gave way to rust, neon graffiti, and survival. Lyra kept her hood drawn low, her glow hidden as best she could. Even so, Daniel noticed her trembling when she passed groups of citizens who sneered and spat in their direction. "Keep walking," he muttered, his hand brushing against the concealed handle of his sidearm. If they wanted us dead, they'd send something more official. They ducked into a side passage that twisted down into a cavernous chamber lit by flickering plasma lamps. There, Daniel saw them, dozens of figures like Lyra. Their bodies shimmered faintly with unwanted colors, their eyes marked by genetic variances deemed impure. The Outcasts. They looked at him with fear and suspicion at first. A few hissed an alien tongue, clutching scraps of metal sharpened into weapons. Lyra stepped forward, lifting her hood, revealing her glow in the half-dark. Gasps rippled through the chamber. "She came back," one whispered, and with him, another hissed. Daniel raised his hands, palms open. "Name's Daniel. Human. You've probably heard by now I've got a talent for bad decisions. I'm not here to tell you how to live. I'm here because your people want you dead. And I don't like bullies. The outcasts exchange uncertain looks. A small child peeked from behind a mother's leg, her glow flickering nervously. Daniel crouched down, ignoring the pain in his ribs, and offered the child a smile. On my world, he said gently, different doesn't mean weak. Different means you've got something nobody else has. And that's worth fighting for. Lyra watched him, her chest tightening. His words weren't just sound. They carried a weight she had never been able to summon herself. From the shadows, an older outcast stepped forward, his glow a muted orange. Fight? With what? We are broken things, scavengers. The Tribunal sends hunters with rifles and drones. We have stones and scraps. Daniel stood slowly, his gaze sweeping over the chamber. He saw the piles of discarded tech, the broken machines, the shattered tools of society that had cast him aside. To him, it wasn't junk. It was opportunity. You've got more than scraps, he said firmly. You've got numbers. You've got courage. You just don't know it yet. And with a little human stubbornness, you'll have something else too. A chance. Silence. Then a murmur. Lyra felt it. The first stirrings of something that had been dead for years among her kind. Hope. Outside, above the neon haze, Tribunal agents prowled the skies. But in the Undercity, among the discarded and condemned, a spark had been struck. And sparks, Daniel knew, had a way of starting fires. Chapter 4, Love Amidst Ruin. The derelict orbital station drifted like a corpse above Kareth, its hull scarred from wars fought generations ago. Jagged breaches gaped in its structure, revealing the stars beyond. A billion pinpricks of silver scattered across an ocean of black. Daniel guided the shuttle into a docking collar that groaned in protest as it sealed. The engines hummed down, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by the hiss of atmosphere regulators straining to life. Inside, the corridors were a graveyard of twisted steel and flickering panels. Gravity was patchy here. Some sections pulled into the floor, others left them drifting, clinging to rails as dust motes floated like ghosts. Lyra moved carefully, her glow pulsing faintly with unease. This place was abandoned after the border wars. My people say it is cursed. Daniel gave a crooked grin, running a gloved hand over a rusted console. Good. Cursed places don't attract tourists. Or enforcers. She tried to return the smile, but her eyes kept flicking toward the darkened corners where echoes lingered too long. Still, she followed him through the station until they found a chamber with intact walls and a viewport cracked but sealed. Beyond it, the planet glowed in blues and purples, Kareth's sprawling cities like veins of neon wrapped around its surface. Daniel sank onto a bench fashioned from broken plating, exhaling hard. Pain flared in his ribs. The wound from the square hadn't healed cleanly. Lyra knelt before him without hesitation, her long fingers tracing the edges of the bandages she had already replaced twice. You shouldn't push yourself, she whispered, carefully tightening the cloth. I've had worse, Daniel lied. His face betrayed him when he hissed against pain. Lyra looked up, her eyes shimmering. Why? Why do this for me? For any of us? You owe us nothing. He hesitated, searching the stars for words. Finally, he said softly, because someone has to. Back home, we learned the hard way that laws and traditions don't always mean justice. Sometimes the only thing that makes the difference is someone deciding enough is enough. Maybe that's stubborn. Maybe it's foolish. But it's human. Her glow betrayed her emotions, flickering in shades of rose and gold. She lowered her hands, then let them rest gently against his chest, not just to steady the bandage this time. For a moment, silence reigned, just the hum of failing engines, just the stars watching. Lyra leaned closer, her forehead brushing his. The warmth of her light seeped into his skin. "To love is forbidden too," she murmured, almost ashamed. "Then it's the best kind of rebellion," Daniel said, his voice rough but steady. She closed her eyes, her glow wrapping around them both like a fragile cocoon. For the first time in her life, she felt seen not as cursed, but as whole. The moment shattered when alarms blared. Red strobes flickered along the corridor outside, and the metallic clang of boots echoed closer. Daniel cursed, shoving himself to his feet, despite the pain. Through the viewport, he glimpsed Tribunal gunships docking, their sleek hulls cutting like knives into the station's carcass. "They found us," Lyra breathed. Drones burst through the hatch, rifles glowing with plasma charge. In zero gravity, the first volley lit the chamber in searing white arcs. Daniel shoved Lyra down, drawing his sidearm in a single fluid motion. He fired, the recoil sending him spinning, body twisting as he caught a rail and reoriented. The fight was chaos. Alien soldiers bounding off walls, plasma trails slicing the air, sparks scattering into weightless embers. Daniel's vision blurred with pain, but he kept firing, every shot precise, every move stubborn. Then Lyra screamed, not in fear, but release. Her body blazed, her light no longer restrained. Radiance exploded from her skin in cascading waves of violet and gold, dazzling the chamber. The drones faltered, sensors blinded. Enforcers shielded their eyes, stumbling in disarray. Daniel floated there, stunned, not by the danger, but by her. Her glow filled the ruin, turning the station's carcass into a cathedral of light. The attackers retreated, dragging their wounded. The alarm silenced. Lyra drifted down beside him, her chest heaving, her glow dimming to a fragile pulse. She looked at him with fear, not of the Tribunal, but of herself. Daniel reached for her hand, gripping it tight. "Don't ever hide that again," he said, breathless. "That light isn't a curse. It's salvation." She clutched his hand back, and for the first time believed him. Chapter 5, The Trial of Fire. The square was not the same as before. Last time, a crowd of 100 had gathered, voices heavy with ritual. Now the entire city watched. Hollow screens the size of towers projected the scene across Caretha's neon skyline, beaming the Tribunal's justice into every marketplace and alley. Even orbiting stations relayed the feed, ensuring no one could escape the spectacle. Daniel and Lyra were dragged into the center by armored enforcers. Their boots struck the obsidian floor in unison, the rhythm cold and mechanical. Daniel's wrists were bound, his shirt torn where plasma burns seared his skin from the station battle. Lyra's glow flickered faintly, suppressed by the inhibitors clamped around her arms. The crowd surged, a tidal wave of murmurs. Some hissed in disgust. Others fell silent, their faces unreadable. The high tribunal descended in a shimmer of light, their crystalline platform floating above the square. 3 figures stood robed in ivory and steel, their eyes glowing with augmented lenses that could pierce heat, light, and even thought. The central elder's voice boomed through the square, amplified by hovering drones. "The alien woman, Lyra, stands guilty of impurity, her light a violation of the sacred genome. The human, Daniel Cross, stands guilty of obstruction, rebellion, and corruption of our law. Their sentence is death." A cheer rose from one side of the square. From another, only uneasy silence. Daniel lifted his head. Pain radiated through every breath, but his eyes burned with defiance. "You talk about purity like it's worth bleeding for. But what's it ever given you? Fear? Chains? The death of children because they shine too bright." The elder sneered. "Human, you presume to lecture us on survival? Your kind are scattered vagabonds, clinging to rusted ships and borrowed air." Daniel took a step forward, his bonds rattling. "Maybe, but we survive because we stand together. Because when someone different, someone weaker, is threatened, we bleed for them. That's what makes us strong. Not laws, not purity. Sacrifice. The square quieted. His words weren't shouted. They were felt, his voice cutting through the air with the weight of truth. Even the hollow screen seemed to lean closer, projecting his battered face, his bloodied chest, his scars. Lyra's heart hammered. Her light, suppressed by the clamps, still fought to escape. Daniel's voice, his raw stubbornness, made it harder to hold back. Her skin pulsed against the inhibitors, sparks of violet slipping through the cracks. The elder's hand twitched. Enough. Execution now. Stones were raised again, this time by drones programmed to obey. They hovered above, each one locked in targeting sequence. The crowd leaned forward, breathless. Daniel glanced sideways at Lyra, forcing a smile through the blood on his lips. If this is how it ends, at least I stood with you. Something inside her broke. With a cry, Lyra's glow erupted. The inhibitors sparked, overloaded, then shattered in bursts of molten slag. Her light poured out of her body in blinding waves, violet, gold, crimson, every shade the Tribunal had forbidden. It surged upward, filling the square with living auroras. The drones faltered, their targeting sensors scrambled. The stones they carried dropped harmlessly to the ground. The crowd gasped, not in horror this time, but awe. Children pressed closer to screens, whispering to parents. Outcasts hidden in the city's shadows wept openly, their own forbidden colors stirring beneath their skin. The Tribunal recoiled, their robes glaring white under the blaze of Lyra's light. Blasphemy! One screamed. But it was too late. The seed Daniel had planted, the defiance of one human bleeding for another, had taken root, and Lyra, radiant in the center of the square, had become something her people could no longer call cursed. She had become a symbol. The trial of fire was no longer theirs to command. Chapter 6, The Light That Cannot Be Killed. The first stone struck Daniel squarely in the shoulder. He staggered, blood splattering across the obsidian floor. But his boots didn't move. He stood like an anchor against the storm, eyes blazing even as his body threatened to fold. Beside him, Lyra's light surged brighter, her hands trembling as she reached toward him. "Stay behind me," he rasped. But Lyra shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks, refracting the glow pouring from her skin. Not anymore. Above them, the Tribunal shouted, their amplified voices breaking against the roar of the crowd. The drones swirled overhead, recalibrating, preparing to rain down more death. The enforcers along the edges of the square raised their rifles, their armor glowing with crimson targeting systems. And then it happened. From the crowd's edge, figures began to push forward, hesitant at first, then bolder. The outcast Daniel had trained in the Undercity emerged, wielding sharpened scrap metal, jury-rigged energy blades, and plasma charges stolen from black markets. Their colors shimmered wildly, uncontrolled, as if Lyra's defiance had cracked something open inside them. One of them shouted, voice raw but fierce, "No more chains." The square erupted. Stones meant for Lyra and Daniel were turned against the enforcers. Drones spiraled, caught in the electromagnetic interference of Lyra's radiance. Daniel, though barely able to stand, raised his weapon and fired into the advancing line, each shot shaking his body, but never wavering in aim. Lyra's glow intensified, wrapping around them both like a living shield. Plasma bolts dissolved against it, refracting into cascades of color. The crowd gasped as enforcers stumbled, blinded, their weapons useless in the storm of light. The High Tribunal's central elder shrieked from his floating platform. "This is heresy. End them. End this madness." Daniel turned his head toward him, lips curling into a bloodied grin. "Madness? This is humanity. This is hope." With one final surge, Lyra's entire body ignited in a radiant wave, so bright the hollow screens across the city whitewashed for several seconds. The shield of light pushed outward, shattering drones midair, searing through the Tribunal's platform. The crystalline dais cracked, shards falling like rain. The Elder's voice faltered, swallowed by chaos. When the light finally dimmed, silence rolled over the square. The enforcers had fallen back, their weapons scattered. The crowd stared, not in hatred, but in awe, at the two figures standing at the center, a bleeding human swaying on his feet, and an alien woman glowing like a star made flesh. Daniel collapsed to his knees, the world tilting around him. Lyra caught him, her arms trembling as she cradled him against her. His blood smeared across her pale skin, mingling with her light until it looked as though fire and color bled from both of them. His voice was faint but steady. "See? I told you your light wasn't a curse." He managed a weak smile. "It's the galaxy's gift. Don't hide it again." Lyra clutched him tighter, her tears burning as they fell onto his chest. "You can't leave me now. Not after this. Not after you've shown me what it means to be free." Daniel's eyes fluttered, but he forced them open, locking on hers. "Then, promise me. Carry us forward. The crowd knelt, not out of fear but reverence. Outcasts and citizens alike bowed, not to the Tribunal, whose shattered spire loomed in ruins, but to Lyra and the bleeding human who had stood against them. Lyra lifted her gaze, her glow spreading like dawn over the square. For the first time, her people saw a difference not as corruption, but as salvation. The light that could not be killed had become a revolution. And in Daniel's faint smile there was peace, because humanity's fire had ignited a world. The starship's engines thrummed like a heartbeat, steady and low, carrying them away from Kareth. Beyond the viewport, alien constellations spilled across the void, endless rivers of light. Below, the world they had left behind still shimmered, neon veins wrapping its surface, a city forever changed by what unfolded in its square. Daniel lay against the padded bench of the observation deck, his wounds bound, the faint pull of artificial gravity pressing him down. Lyra sat beside him, her glow soft now, not blazing with defiance, but radiating calm, like a candle instead of storm. For a long while, they said nothing, only watched the stars drift by. Then she reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. The simple contact made his chest tighten more than any battle ever had. "You bled for me," she whispered, her voice fragile but steady. "No one ever has. No one ever would." Daniel turned his head, managing a faint grin through the exhaustion. "That's what we do. Humans, we bleed for the ones who matter." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her light blooming brighter in response. Slowly, she leaned closer, resting her forehead against his. The hum of the ship wrapped around them, carrying their silence like a vow. "We'll build something new," she breathed. "A world where no light is forbidden." Daniel closed his eyes, letting the weight of her promise sink deep. "Together," he said, and as the ship cut across the void, their joined hands reflected in the viewport, two silhouettes became a single point of light, small against the cosmos, yet unbreakable.